So what we're going to do is this is what we got to do. The real estate business is on fire. Talking about getting in a career when it's at the top of the activity, you guys are doing it. Now, it's crazy out there. So what we have to do is we have to get you guys licensed. Got to get you through the classes, get your transcripts, and pass your state test. Because right now there's money to be made in real estate. There's money to be made in real estate. So what we're doing is we're going to follow up with where we started last week. And we're on chapter 2, about halfway through. So what my plan is to just keep rolling through the units as I do these study groups. And then once we get a little closer to the end, and I have, then we will go to some specific areas where there's a lot of questions on the test. So we got Gabrielle on, we got Joanne on, we got Vonnie on, and we may have some other people jump on in the meantime. So we're in unit 2, and some of you may have the book and some of you may not. I'm old school, I still have a book, and unit 2 is land use controls and property development. So let's talk a little bit about building codes and certificates of occupancy. They set construction standards determined by most municipalities. So a building permit, it does not correct the violation of a deed restriction, but building permits are generally local. So here in Ross Straver Township, if you want to build a house, you would have to go to the township to get a building permit. Okay. Joanne, where do you live at?
Denora.
Denora. So if you were going to build a house in Denora, you'd have to go to Denora Borough and say, hey, I want to build a house. Can I have a building permit? And then, so that's where building permits come in. Then there's certificates of occupancy. And when you get a building permit, you have to build a house to certain standards. Okay, certain standards. And typically the local municipalities use maybe state standards for building. And then they could add some other standards on top of it. So if you're going to build a house, where do you go to get a building permit? Anybody answer? If you wanted to build a house, where would you go in Ross Straver Township to get your building permit?
Wouldn't you go to like the municipal authority?
Right. What happens if you lived in Perryopolis? Where would you go in Perryopolis?
Their municipal building?
Right. How about Denora?
Same thing theirs.
You'd go to their borough.
Yeah.
Right. Now, some municipalities require a certificate of occupancy before you occupy a property. And this goes with resale also. So in the city of Menneson, if we sell a house, Monongahela, if we sell a house, those two municipalities I know of for sure. Before we close, we have to get an occupancy permit from the local municipality. So if it's in Menneson, we'd go down to Menneson Borough and get an occupancy permit. They send somebody up, they inspect the property to make sure that it fits their codes. And then they give you an occupancy permit and then the buyer can move in. So a certificate of occupancy is typically prior to moving in. Now, Charleroi, even if it's a rental, every time you get a tenant, you would have to get a new certificate of occupancy. And they want to come up and they want to make sure that you got ground fault breakers, in the kitchen and bathrooms. They want to make sure that everything's up to their code. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Now, Pennsylvania has construction codes and local, but codes are typically local in nature. And each municipality and city exercises its regulatory right to adopt codes. All municipalities don't have codes. I would assume they all have a building code, and if not, then it would go up to the state. And right here, only 1,100 of the 2,500 municipalities have any kind of construction code for new construction in Pennsylvania. So less than half of them. Let's talk a little bit about regulation for land development. You have a subdivision. Does everybody know what a subdivision is?
Mm-hmm.
Subdivision is you take this big piece of land, let's say 20 acres, and a subdivider is a guy that would take that land and subdivide it up into lots. He would put streets, sidewalks, lots, okay? And he would lay the plan out. Then a developer would come in, and all kinds of different people have roles when you see these new construction plans come up. Then a developer would come in and he develops the roads and puts the utilities in. And then dedication is private property transfer for public use. So a lot of times when these developments come in, the local municipality says you have to dedicate so much land for public use, and then they'll put like a park where they'll put a pavilion. You ever see that in some of the plans? A cabana. So know that a subdivision is where you take a big piece of land and you break it up. Usually a subdivider does that. Once it's done, then they record it in the courthouse. Then a developer comes in and puts the roads and utilities in. And then typically they will dedicate some of that land for public use. And then a builder will come in and build the homes. So there's a lot of different people that have a role to play when land is being developed. With land development, you have to comply with the municipal's comprehensive plan. We talked about comprehensive plan. What is a comprehensive plan?
It's the master plan.
The master plan. Who puts that together?
The developer.
No, the master plan is put together by local municipalities.
Okay.
So Ross Draver Township has a comprehensive plan or a master plan. Monongahela, they may have a comprehensive plan. So the local municipality, so land development planning, you have to comply with the local municipality's comprehensive plan. Now, does anybody know what a plat is? A plat.
The map for the subdivision?
Yes. So a plat would be a map.
I was just looking at it.
Would be a map laying out all the lots. Now it's a plat in the beginning, and that has the engineering data on it. It would have the restricted covenants, and then it's recorded in the courthouse. And once it's recorded, it's used as a legal description for the real property. So let's say Shawnee Point up here in Ross Draver Township. If you sold a lot in Ross Draver Township, and there's 3 different kind of legal descriptions could be in a deed. Does anybody know them? Give me one of them. The 3 different, what kind?
Meet and bounds.
Meets and bounds. Meets and bounds is where the surveyor actually goes out there and they say so many degrees west, 10 feet. then so many degrees south. What's another one?
Lots and blocks.
Lots and blocks. So lots and blocks would refer to this plat that was recorded. So if you sold a house in Shawnee Point, they wouldn't use the meets and bounds in the deed. They would say lot number 24 in the Shawnee Point plan of lots. Okay, but then they have that plaque recorded in a courthouse. The engineer can go to that recording, and each lot, the meets and bounds would be recorded in the courthouse. And that's how a surveyor would get it. But in the deed, it would just say lot 24 in Shawnee Point. And again, plats are used to record and used for legal descriptions for real property. Then there's environmental impact statement may be required, okay, to see if they're going to build this development, how is it going to affect the environment? Have you ever seen, in Ross River Township, you have to do stormwater detention. Have you ever seen these new construction projects, and then there's like a big dry pond somewhere on the site? They call that stormwater detention because, you know, this was, let's say, farmland, 20 acres. Well, if it rained, you had all grass, right? Well, now the developer comes in and he puts all these roads and houses and driveways and sidewalks. So now the rainwater, there's not as much ground for the rainwater to get absorbed in. So they have to do stormwater detention where they can run all this water in a big dry pond, and then it slowly leaches out of that pond when there's heavy rains. So subdivision plans, again, are laid out by lots and block. We just talked about that. There's a tax burden on all the residents. So all the residents would be assessed. And then there's also what they call impact fees. Okay, does anybody know what impact fees are? Now remember, guys, this is a term test. This is a term test. So you got to know your terms. You have a book, come on.
I do. I don't know where it is right now.
Okay. Well, you got to dig it. Well, you're getting back in a groove.
Yeah.
It would be a good thing to take on vacation, Vaughn.
I know.
And just look at the terms in the beginning of every chapter.
Yeah.
Joanne, do you have a book?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. You got to utilize. How about you, Gabrielle?
I do not have a book.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, Gabrielle. You're taking the classes online, correct?
Yes.
Did they send you a PDF of the terms?
I have a, sorry, go ahead.
Are you able to get a PDF of the terms?
I'm pretty sure I should be able to. If not, at the end of each lesson, they have like the key terms at the bottom, and I've been writing them down on like a page of just key terms. So.
Okay, so somebody told me that you can get the terms online when you take your class. And they even emailed me a PDF of the terms. So I will email everybody the terms that I have. And really, that's one of your best study guides. So let me stop sharing for a second here. And let me see if I can just sit tight with us, guys. You can't see my screen right now, but I want to Because basically this is a terms test. So just bear with me. Bear with me, I'm getting there. So pre-licensing key terms PDF. So let me see if I could share my screen. Just bear with me. Could you guys see that? Pre-licensing class key terms.
Yes.
Okay, so this came from Real Estate U. So is anybody taking classes from Real Estate U?
I am.
Okay, so these are in alphabetical order, the terms. Now, I much prefer having the terms for each unit. So as you go through a unit, look up the terms. And you're saying, Gabrielle, that there's terms in each unit at the end of the unit?
Yeah, and each there's like, you know, the chapter, and then there's like little sections in each one, and if that section has like a key term that you need to know, at the bottom it'll have for that.
Okay, that's probably a better way, because my job is to help you pass the test, right? That's what this is all about. And I do appreciate you guys coming on this morning, because Joanne, Gabrielle, Vaughnie, and Vaughnie has been with us since early 2020 because she was in the last live class we had. And then the pandemic hit, you couldn't even take your test, huh, Vaughn?
I did take my test.
You did, you were able to take it? Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the pandemic slowed things down dramatically.
Yeah.
So my goal is to help you get through this class. Now, I have not signed up for the Real Estate U because I'm too cheap to spend $150. But Gabrielle, you did, correct?
Yes.
So my question would be, like, does it follow the book?
It does follow the book. It offered you could buy the books. I just didn't buy the books because I felt like, you know, I felt like I'd be able to do it online easier.
Right.
It's like a note taker, so like I like to write things down anyway.
Okay, so like, for example, Unit 1's real property and the law. Is that with Unit 1 is on online classes?
For my chapter 1, section 1, it was, yeah, it said basic definitions, and it had like the rights and stuff like that, and then it went to land, real estate, and real property.
Okay, yep. So it probably follows it. I'll have to break down and spend a few bucks.
If you want, come to the office one day and you can log in on my account and look at it if you want to.
Oh, that would be perfect. That would be perfect.
Yeah, I don't live that far from the office, so I can just come in one day.
Okay. Let me know when you want to come in and we'll do that.
Yeah, whenever works best for you, I'm free. So
okay. So let's go back to impact fees. So we said that there's impact fees that local municipalities may charge to I'm having a little bit of trouble with my computer here, so bear with me. Technology, huh? Okay, let me see if I can get this thing going again.
Oh.
So bear with me, guys. Okay, so subdivision plans are laid out by lots and blocks. There's a potential tax burden, so everybody's gonna have to pay taxes. Then there's impact fees. We're gonna talk about impact fees in a second. So in Pennsylvania, some of the concerns would be if you're a local municipality, you wanna make sure there's enough water. You wanna make sure that there's environmentally sound sewage disposal. Most of the time, it's community sewage. And sewage disposal must comply with the PA Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP. And there's an importance of soil absorption or draining capability. That would be if the land does not have community sewage, they would do a soil absorption test. And did you ever hear the term perk test?
Yeah.
That's what a perk
Yep.
test does. So a soil scientist comes out, they dig a big hole about 6 feet deep. He climbs down in there. He looks and sees the soil, because what he's looking for is how much topsoil there is versus clay. And then if that part of the test passes, then he makes sure, dig these holes with a postal digger and put water in and then time it. And they time how quickly the water dissipates through it. So these are all things you got to make sure, right? Because if you have a house, don't you need good water?
Yes.
Yes. Don't you need good sewage? Yes. So these are all things. So impact fees are a local way for local municipalities to collect money. So I would know that term impact fee. So for example, they feel if you're going to put a subdivision in, there's going to be an impact to the community, right? There's going to probably be more trucks driving on the road, traffic coming in and out. So the local municipality will charge a developer an impact fee to offset some of those expenses. So again, all it is a way for a local municipality to collect fees. Something else you need to be aware of with a subdivision is density. Now, density zoning ordinances may restrict the average number of houses per acre because they may not want all the houses right on top of each other. So they may say, I think in Ross Draver, it's like a quarter acre. For every acre of property, you could have 4 homes. And again, the density must be consistent with whatever the local ordinance. Does that make sense? This is just all common sense stuff, right? If you're going to do a subdivision and build homes, you got to make sure you got water, make sure you got sewage. You got to follow the municipalities as far as how many houses per acre. In Pennsylvania, usually the developer is responsible to put the streets in, and the local municipalities can charge an impact fee. So remember that. The Interstate Land Use Disclosure Act. Disclosure must be given to buyers on the type of title, the number of homes currently on site, the availability of recreational facilities, the distance to nearby communities, utility services and charges, and soil conditions for foundations and construction problems. Now, the Interstate Land Full Disclosure Act came into play when they started building Disneyland in Florida. Anybody ever been to Disney?
No.
Yeah.
Who was at Disney?
I was.
Okay. When you went down there, ain't there a lot of swamps down there?
Yes.
See, Disney was built in swamps. So when they built Disneyland or started it, they started selling lots. And they would say, only a mile from Disneyland. And people would buy these lots without even seeing the property, okay, as an investment. And then when they got down there, they found out the lot was a swamp. So that's where they came up with this Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. And that is so that when you're buying property in another state, that you know the soil conditions, how many homes are currently on the site, because a lot of people got ripped off in Florida when they built Disney, and then scammers started selling land. So everything we talked about so far was government regulations to build, correct? This last half hour. Let's
Yes.
talk about private land use controls, because everything we talked about was government controls. So with private controls, you can have deed restrictions. Okay, so I tell the story that I bought 4 lots down in Brownsville on the river. I sold 2 and kept 2. The 2 that I sold, I put a deed restriction that you could not have a manufactured or a mobile home on it. Because my thinking was I was going to build a house on my lot. And if I sold the lots beside me, I would prefer that they build a house on it versus put a mobile home on it, because if they put a house on it, it would increase everybody's value. So if I had 4 houses on a river, we had 4 houses by different owners, that would pull the values up. So you can put a deed restriction in a deed if you're selling a piece of property. Because remember, these are private, meaning you can do this. The landowner can do this. Then there's restricted covenants. Okay. So when the developer of Shawnee Point in Ross Draver got everything approved, he also recorded restricted covenants. Now, restricted covenants in Shawnee Point, for example, and these are recorded right in the courthouse. So anybody that buys a lot in Shawnee Point has to follow these. All the fronts of the houses have to be either brick or stone. Now, the sides didn't, the backs didn't, but the fronts did. You couldn't put a fence no closer to the road than the front corner of the house. The homes had to be a certain size, 2 stories, 1.5 stories, and ranches all had to be a certain size. So restricted covenants, typically the developer does that to try to hold up the property value. And those are private. Enforcement, private restrictions can be enforced in court. So in Shawnee Point, if the covenants say the front of the house has to be brick or stone, and somebody goes in there and builds a house, and they make the front vinyl, there's no police that are gonna come and say, hey, you gotta change that. So people that would live in the plan would have to go to court to enforce that restriction, enforce that person to do the right thing. See how that's handled? So enforcement is done in the courts. And in Pennsylvania, if it's a condo or a planned unit development, a PUD, you must receive those copies prior to closing, prior to review. So does anybody ever hear of Spring Grove condominiums?
No.
Okay, it's a condo plan here in Ross Straver. And if you're gonna buy a condo in Spring Grove, you have to review the ordinance, the rules and regulations prior to moving in. So in Pennsylvania, that's a law. You need to know that. So that covers units, the rest of unit 2.